we heard about the salmon farm expansion on the 6:30 news. Not one fisherman in the state. I'm on an advisory council. I go to all the meetings. Not one fisherman in this state had a hand in that.
So is that once it was done,
Well,
you heard about it, or once it was approved?
Once they approve the growth plan, they still have to be issued a permit before they can put the pens in the water. But, you take that northwest tip. That is the most crucial, sensitive fish breeding, feeding area in this state. The amount of species that come there to reproduce in those seagrass beds and in the wider marine environment is just astronomical.
So do you think there's just going to be too much of it? Like, what would the solution be for them to cut back?
Well, salmon farms have to, here in Tasmania, all our inshore waters, we're a little rock in the middle of the water. All our inshore areas are fish breeding propagation areas, and they've done very little studies on the effect, none I don't believe, on the effect on fish larval movement from these salmon farms. Most pelagic fish larvae have to inflate a little air sac when they pop out of the egg, so they have to come to the surface to do that. If there's a barrier in any way, shape or form, they die. And if you look at the northwest coast, we're the most heavily polluted coastline in Australia. The APPM mill, they now know that effluent, they called it the black liquor. Every night they open the valves up and it's all the tannin and all the nasties through the bleaching process that was released into the harbour and went out to sea. It was killing fish larvae. The cooter fishery that was huge off Wynyard, over 8 years, 6 or 7, 8 years, they fished down the year classes because all the larvae was getting killed, and they fished the year classes down and it collapsed. The King George whiting that are in the northwest with the distinct genetics to this area, they breed in the northwest. That larvae floats eastward, coming into contact with the pulp mill, dead. Since that pulp mill's gone, since dioxide's gone, since the acid plant's gone, our fish life here, I've never seen the amount of fish in my lifetime that we have here. You see schools of fish everywhere. When I set my small mesh, I'm getting 20 to 30 different species in the net. It's just amazing what's happened.
So what would the solution be? Because obviously you can't shut everything down.
No, you do it properly.
Would it be to police it more, or how do you mean by do it properly?
Well, everything's really simple. If you take a simple approach to everything, it's usually the best way. And it all comes down to good or bad practice. We don't have to reinvent the wheel now. We know what's bad. We know what's detrimental. So we don't do it. We look for an alternative. And, with getting salmon farms on land, that cheap power offered a opportunity, they should take that. They should get out of our marine environment, set themselves apart from the other two players in the salmon industry, and I'll buy shares in that company.
So what would that entail? Like big breeding tanks on land, or
a reticulated or recirculated closed loop setup. They're doing it around the world.
So how much would that cost them to get done?
Well, this is the thing. I met with a couple of salmon farms representatives, and they said, if we go on land, we'd go closer to our market, which is Melbourne, Sydney. So they'd probably go to Cootamundra, but they'd have a hard time marketing Cootamundra Atlantic salmon. They need Tasmania, and to a degree, we need the jobs that are provided for them. But
so do you reckon that's them bluffing, trying to make the government scared of enforcing that? Because they're like, hey, if you make us do that, we're going.
Well, they said the single biggest deterrent from going on land is the excess power they have to use for the pumps of the water and everything. Well, now they've just recently been offered cheap power, so they can't throw that one at us anymore. And if they go out of our marine environment to somewhere else, this is the thing. These salmon farms have been given sole licence for these areas. There hasn't been a public tender process. And I talked to a fella that did the salmon farm enterprise well before he sold out. He said we could put 6 or 8 individuals, give them their own pen, let them share in the profits and do it properly. We don't need big corporations, big companies. This can be done by small players if the government's willing to come on board and back them. So,
So where's all that salmon going to?
Melbourne, Sydney. There's very little being exported. I had a lady come up to me, a scientist actually, and she said she realised she's found out the mercury content. They're telling people to eat this salmon every day of the week, but she said the mercury content in there, I wouldn't be advising people to do that. I'll be getting that email shortly. I want to have a good look at that. It's a dirty product. The food, the antibiotics, the oil, I got another email the other day that was suggesting that the reason they've got all the algal growth down in the channel, down D'Entrecasteaux and up the Tasman Peninsula, is because in the last 2 years they've been substituting the wild fish oil component with palm oil. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but he found references with the salmon feed companies with the palm oil and what have you. And if they've been using that in the last 2 years, which coincides with this algal growth, which we've never had, like we've had, well, you know, it's not natural. And it's not a healthy choice. They're killing the marine environment, killing wild fisheries, and trying to tell us to eat this product, which is, I wouldn't touch it with a barge pole, mate. And none of the people I know work on salmon farms eat it. You know, it's a dirty product, and shouldn't be going near it.